Hello and welcome to PC Retro Tech. So in today's video we're going to be building a classic Celeron computer from the year 2000. So the Celeron was a cheap alternative to the Pentium 3 and the Pentium 2 back in the day. So this is actually from the year 1998, that's when it was manufactured, but it would have been purchased in 99, and it's a Celeron 466. Now they had a lot less cache than the Pentium 3s, and so they were really overclockable, and so we'll see today whether we can do any overclocking at all of this chip. So this is a Medion 2000 motherboard that we're going to put it into, and this was probably in a supermarket computer of the day. So it has socket 370, PC 133 RAM, it has an AGP 4x slot, it has a VR VT 82C694X chipset, and unfortunately it's been damaged a little bit. You can see that the end of the AGP slot's been snapped off when they've reclaimed this. It doesn't affect the function, and the same has happened to the IDE slots here. We'll be able to repair those. I've got the bits and we can super glue that back together. So that's the board we're going to use, and I think it cost me less than €10. So in keeping with the budget nature of the build, I've picked parts which I've been able to pick up really cheaply. So the graphics card I'm going to use is this GeForce 2 MX, and it's 64 megabytes, it's AGP, and it's from the year 2000. So it would have been one of the better cards you could get in that era, and it cost me €1. So this is the sound card I'm going to use. Now it does have onboard sound on the motherboard, but I prefer to have a separate sound card. So this is a PCI Sound Blaster Live from the year 2000, and it was €1 as well. The hard drive is this IBM DeskStar May 2000 drive. It's 15 gigabytes, and again this cost me €1. We've got 256 megs of RAM. This is PC 133 RAM, which we don't really need for this build. We could have used PC 100, but I want to give the maximum opportunity for overclocking here if it's at all possible. The floppy drive in really nice condition. I managed to get that for €1, and the CD-ROM is a bit of a fail. This is actually June 2001, but I really wanted a 52 times drive for this build. And so I allowed myself to go it's even only 6 months over for the CD-ROM. The hardest part to get for this build was actually the case, and it took me more than 6 months to find a really cheap case for this build. I set myself a limit of €20 for a case, which is really low given that a lot of beige cases nowadays go for about €130 if they're in really good condition. But believe it or not, I got a really great deal on this case, and it was only €7. It's about the right era, I think, and it's not new. It does have some marks on it, but it is in really nice condition. And we're going to install Windows 98 on the system. It's a little bit earlier for the Windows XP era, and there's not really much in between that's worth using, so I'm going to use Windows 98 for this particular build. So let's get to it and start putting everything together. So the first thing that I'm doing here is just gluing the plastic back onto the end of the IDE slot, and for this I'm just using a bit of super glue. You have to be a little bit careful with super glue. You want to apply it with some kind of applicator, because if you just squirt it onto the thing that you're trying to glue, it'll just go everywhere and you'll never get it off. It'll get stuck into everything. The cables will be stuck in the connector and so on. So I'm just using a little plastic tie here to gently apply super glue to the surfaces that need it, and then I'm just holding the part in place until it sticks well enough that I can let go with my finger, and it'll hopefully stay there, and within about 10 minutes that'll be glued. So the first thing I'm noticing about this case, other than some ugly stickers on the back which I took off with some alcohol, is that it doesn't have the normal screws on this side to take the side of the case off. So I can actually slide the motherboard tray out like this, which is quite convenient, but of course that's no use if I can't get access to the drive bays. So I'm pretty sure that this case is going to have some really unusual way of opening it, and that's probably why it went so cheap on eBay. A lot of people don't like non-standard things like this, but it's absolutely perfect for our budget build today. So let's see if maybe the front of the case comes off this. Another thing you can see is this case is really long. It's not very high, but it's extremely long. So I'm going to just see if the front will clip off here. That's presumably, yep, that indeed does, and that's presumably how I'm going to get access to the inside of this case. Yeah, so you can see that there were at some point screws in the front here, and the slide does slide off, but it just comes off from the front. So I think that's a pretty reasonable compromise for a €7 case. So now I have access to everything inside here. So I'm going to go ahead and install the motherboard next, and I'll show you what that looks like afterwards. This case already has mounting pins or connectors, so I just need to screw the board in, presumably, into those. So another slightly weird thing that I've just noticed is that the hard drive bay here, you can access this side no problems to screw the drive in, but on the other side, well, of course that's just the case, and this is all just one continuous piece going all the way around here. So in fact it's even riveted on, so there's no way to get in at that side. So I think that the only way I'm going to be able to insert the hard drive is to actually unscrew the hard drive bay and remove it, and then put the hard drive in that way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So it looks like there's just two screws here at the front which come out. This is pretty inconvenient, and I can't imagine why people wanted to design cases this way. It doesn't make any real sense from the point of view of building computers, and I'm pretty sure these would have been unpopular with PC builders, since you have to go through all these extra steps to get things in. So the hard drive itself screwed in no problems. The floppy drive, of course, is going to be difficult to line up, but there are actually two holes here marked, and they do actually line up with the two holes that you're supposed to screw the floppy into. So I'm hoping that if I put screws into those now, then the floppy drive will actually be at the right distance from the sort of sit neatly flush with the case. We'll see how that goes. So the next thing I have to do is insert the CD-ROM, but what I notice immediately is that it actually slides a long way back and forth inside the slot here, so clearly there has to be something else go in there, and I think that's what these clips are for. So I think that I screw these onto the CD-ROM and then it just slides in and clips into place. This is what the ROM looks like with those things screwed to the side, and if I'm not mistaken it should now just slide in. It's quite a tight fit, and I hear various clicks going on here, and it seems to clip in and it's pretty solidly held in there. So I think that's the way it's supposed to go. So the only thing that remains now is for us to put the front back on this case and see how it looks, whether those drives line up. Alright, so everything came together and it's time to switch it on and see whether it boots. So I'm not seeing any lights there. Oh yeah, they are working, it's just very dim. Very strange. Yeah, it's booted up, and so it says Celeron 466, and it's counting to 256 megs of RAM. Detecting drives, yeah, it detected the drive and the CD-ROM. Floppy looks like it's okay, and it looks like it's got DOS or something on the drive. So let's go ahead and start installing Windows 98 on the machine. So as you can hear, Windows 98 is installed, and we've got the NVIDIA drivers installed along with the Sound Blaster Live drivers. I did have a problem initially with the machine stuttering when it started up, and this just turned out to be a conflict between the onboard sound and the sound card. So I disabled the onboard sound, so it's just the sound card installed now. I've also installed DirectX 9C, which supports Windows 98. And I put the VF4-in-1 drivers on. So everything seems to be working perfectly, so I'm going to go ahead and install some demos. I had a look at the BIOS to see whether overclocking is going to be possible, and unfortunately on this particular machine, overclocking is just out of the question. There are no options in the BIOS at all for changing the CPU speed, and of course there are no jumpers on the motherboard except the CMOS clear. So we're not going to be able to do any overclocking, unfortunately. But I'm pretty happy with how this is running. It seems to be very smooth, and everything looks pretty playable from a game perspective. These demo programs were usually written a few years in advance, so the hardware of the day was always just a little bit slow on it, and you really had to get later hardware if you want it to run really smooth. But this is all running pretty well. So at least for 1999 we're doing pretty well as far as performance is concerned. So this is the 3D Mark 2000 demo. It seems to run pretty well. It's quite smooth, but you do see some jerking every now and again. So this is Half-Life Counterstrike, and you can see that it's pretty smooth. It's running quite well, and this was actually 2002. At least that's what the discs that I have say. It might have been a rehash of an older game, but it does seem to actually be quite smooth. This is 800, 600, and so it looks like everything's working really well. So I'm not going to play this for very long because I'm not actually very familiar with this game. It's the first time I've actually tried to play this. This is just a training mission. I think you need a net connection to a server which is long since defunct anyway, so I think we'll leave it there. So that's basically it today, guys. You can see that everything's installed correctly here, and it's all running very well. I'm actually surprised that it doesn't overheat. Around that CPU gets very hot in there, but I haven't had any issues whatsoever with it overheating while I've been playing with it here. And yeah, so the Celeron seems like it was a really great option for people who didn't have a lot of money back in the day, couldn't afford a Pentium 3, but wanted to get, you know, some really decent gaming performance for their computers. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in a later video. Bye!